All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today with our webinar, Effective Ways to Utilize AI in Marketing. My name is Tatu Kuivalahti. I'm the CEO of Custobar, CDP, Customer Data Platform and Marketing Automation Tool. And then we have here, and I'm really happy to have Colin Shearer from Houston Analytics, Chief Strategy Officer. So nice to get you. Nice to join you with the webinar, Colin.
Thank you very much, Tatu. It's a pleasure to participate today. As you know, AI in marketing has been a real interest of mine. It's been close to my heart for many years. I think the first time I got involved in it was back in the 1990s. And last year, Rasmus Hulland and I wrote a book which was published called Make It All About Me, which is all about this theme of using AI to really personalize marketing in the truest sense. I'm still very excited about what that can do and looking forward to talking to you all about that today.
Yeah, me too. And there is this brand Armstrong One, which appears in some of the slides, which is like AI-driven marketing kind of toolbox provided by Houston Analytics, and we have close cooperation with Custobar and Houston Analytics, and this Armstrong One AI toolbox can be utilized together with Custobar. But yeah, let's get started now with the content. So short introductions we already had. We have basically divided this about 1 hour, 45 to 1 hour, depending on how many questions we get then in the end. We have divided this into 2 parts. So basically, in order to be successful with AI, there are certain prerequisites that you have to manage before getting there. So that's the part I'm kind of tackling. And then the second part is then how you can utilize and what are the business benefits of utilizing AI in marketing. Yeah, so that's basically it. But let's get started with the prerequisites. So first of all, you have to collect and match your data, and that's very much what Custobar tool does. So Custobar is a customer data platform. And just shortly, what it means, what it is. So customer data platform is a term which came out a few years ago, and the idea is that we collect all the customer transaction data, purchase data, and other behavioral data into one tool and create this kind of unified customer profile, matching all the different touchpoint data from different sources and kind of create this one unified customer profile. And then when we have that data in there, then you can start utilizing the data for different purposes. And it's of course, then we come to the marketing automation side of Custobar. So you can start building audiences, like dynamic audiences and rules when to trigger messages. And then you have set of different types of channels, like email, SMS, push notifications to web or mobile apps. And then nowadays, in more and more important channel is also a display advertisement. So you can also push and direct campaigns and advertisement that you have out there with your own data, utilizing the customer data platform data. So this is the kind of, these are the key elements here. But let's look at some of these topics in more detail now. And then, yeah, just to mention, the Armstrong One is actually the kind of the kind of layer within the marketing automation, which kind of automates things further. We call it automation of marketing automation. That means that rather than creating segments and audiences, the AI kind of algorithms can decide which messages to be sent to to which customers at which time. So that's kind of the service on top of the marketing automation. One underlying idea here, which will be in many of the content that we are sharing with you today, is this kind of customer journey idea of the customer journey from the beginning to the end, or actually it doesn't have an end because it's a kind of infinite loop. So then it's divided into two main parts. The left side part is when your customers are unknown, or they are like potential customers, but you don't have you haven't identified them yet. So in that phase, they are in this kind of marketing cycle. And then when you identify them, you get to the right side. So then you know the customers, then you can start collecting data identified to your customer, and then communicating the customer more personally than what you can do on the left side. Of course, there are some ways to personalize advertisement and messages also on the left side, but it's your own hands when you get the customer contact details, and then you get to the right side cycle. And then you should avoid of customers kind of returning back to the passivation, because then you need to kind of start from the beginning, the loop, in a way. So the longer you can keep the customer in the right hand side loop, the better, basically. And this is the concept we are going to discuss a lot. And I have a little bit different angle to this same view. So let's look at that soon. But before that, let's go into the kind of very concrete topic. So what is the data? So because we are all the time talking about the data, but I wanted to kind of concretize it very clearly. What is the data we are talking about? So these 5 elements, or 6 elements here, are the kind of basics of all the data, the underlying data that we are talking about. First of all, it covers the basic customer data. That's obvious, of course: customer's name, address, email, phone number, etc., marketing permissions. So that's the kind of core customer data, which is the starting point. But that's not enough. That's not enough. So next element is then the purchase data. And of course, there are many different types of businesses. Some businesses your customers are purchasing physical products. Some are providing services to customers, continuous services. But it's always there's some kind of purchase at some point of the customer journey. So, and there are certain data points in the purchase always. There is the date when the purchase happens, what were the products or services purchased, what were the prices and quantities, and also what was the channel the customer made the purchase. It can be a website, it can be a mobile app, it can be a physical store, it can be customer service. So there are many different channels, and that leads to the channel perspective. So it's really important to kind of keep track on all the channels where you get the purchases, and then also, of course, which products or services were sold. So, and the product data is also important, kind of when you start then targeting, when you start personalizing the content and messages to the customer, it's important to understand what were the products they have been using and what they have been purchasing from you. Then there are a long list of other touch points, and that varies a lot, of course, depending on your business, the type of your business. It can be browsing data from your website, it can be mobile app usage, it can be customer service tickets, feedback, survey results, logins, even location data. If you have a mobile app provided to your customers, you might get some location information where they are moving. And these are just examples. Every business have different types of touch points, but what is essential and critical here is that you try to identify the customer in these different touch points and in all the purchase touch points, so that you get identified data. And that's important, because only then you get the customer to the right hand side loop of the picture. If you don't identify the customer, it's anonymous data, and that's not so. You can do something about, you can get some statistics out of it, but you can't know who was the customer, and you can't utilize that information for your further personalizing the customer experience to the consumer. Then quite new thing is what we had discovered recently, but really interesting also, enriching the data with external data sources. There are different service providers. We, for example, cooperate with the postal organizations of different countries to get the kind of enriched customer data, like demographic data, some kind of like for example, housing, type of housing the customers are living in, etc. So there are many different types of enrichments that you can kind of connect to your basic customer database. But this is the kind of data, underlying data that we are talking about. Prerequisite for you is that you manage this data, and the CDP tool, Custobar, is one good tool to manage this data so that it's useful then for AI. If we look at then the channels a little bit more detailed, so this is the kind of the same idea here. The left side is the lead generation, the anonymous customers, and the right side is the customer engagement, or communicating with your existing customers, existing customer contacts. And in the middle here are actually those service channels where you serve the customers. It can be your own website, it can be your mobile app, your physical locations if you have, and then also your customer service, phone calls, emails. So those are the kind of touch points where your organization is in touch with the customer. And what is important here, I kind of mentioned it several times during this speech, is the identification. So this red line here in the middle, of course, it's not obvious. I mean, the customers might be interacting with in these channels even without the identification, but it's really important for your data and for your utilizing, especially when you are utilizing the AI, is that you identify as high percentage of your customers as possible. You can do the identification using email, phone number, loyalty number, cookie ID, whatever the method is, but it's really, really crucial in that you would kind of try to increase the percentage of your identified customers. In some businesses, it's easy because there might be some reasons. For example, if you're buying a car, you usually always have to give your name and address, for example, or identify yourself. But then there are many businesses where it's not mandatory to identify, and in those businesses especially, it's important that you think about what is the way and nice way and easy way for the consumers to identify themselves, and how you motivate also the consumers and also your own staff to get the identification from the customers. But this is really important here. Then if we look at the channels, on the left side there are different channels. There are the display ad channels, there's search engine optimization, there are your own social media channels, etc. So there are many different channels where you kind of generate leads. And on the right side, you might think that, okay, this is customer engagement, it's maybe emailing, but it's not only emailing. There are actually quite many channels also in the right side. So in the middle of this customer engagement is your CDP, your customer data, and Custobar is there, and then the marketing automation, and then Armstrong One kind of creating more automation and intelligence around the marketing automation is here. So email is definitely, of course, still one channel. It might be here forever, but still it's going strong, and email, even though the visibility of email, people are getting a lot of emails, but email is still really valid and cheap way to contact customers. SMS is another kind of really old method. There are some problems with the SMS, but it still works very well, and especially it kind of it goes through to the customers, and when you're using it, it's really powerful method to kind of communicate to and reach your customers. Then there are different types of notifications, web personalization, even direct mail, print mail, messaging tools, call center. So there are lots of channels on this side, and what is important is that, again, you identify the customers and then get the data to the CDP in order to personalize the message, in order to segment and direct, kind of personalize and send even like one-to-one messages to customers based on the intelligence here provided by AI. And then quite new thing, as I mentioned already, is that you can nowadays utilize also the CDP data when you are targeting customers in these display ads channels. And at Custobar, we have actually native integrations now with both Facebook ads and Google ads. And this is becoming more and more important since the browsers are blocking those third-party cookies, and that third-party cookies has traditionally been the way for these display ads networks to collect the data from the users and from the user behavior, but soon they are not able to do it anymore, and that's why it becomes really critical that you utilize CDP tool like Custobar to communicate that, get that data back to these display ad channels. And what is good point here is also that you can actually limit what data you want to send there. So you don't need to automatically send everything to those display ad channels. And then another viewpoint, this is basically the same idea, but it's just the kind of process view. So basically there are lots of these different touch points during the customer journey, during the path where the customer is which the customer is taking and coming into your store, whether it's physical or online store. And again, here the red line, the identification is important, that you try to identify the customer not only here when the customer makes the order or the purchase, but as early in the process as possible. That's really important, that you would try to motivate the customer to give the email or keep phone number or somehow join your club, or it doesn't need to be a traditional loyalty program, it can be something else, but there have to be some way of motivating customers to identify themselves so that you use, and of course the ultimate reason for consumers to do that is that they get more relevant information from you. You are not sending them any more mass if you know the customer, if you know the preferences of the customer based on the behavior. And then of course it's important to understand that it's not only action level of the customers, but customers have also thoughts and feelings, and the feelings of what is the experience of the customer in each of these touch points is of course really important and affecting how they are moving along in the path. And finally, I've included here we have identified actually 10 different ways to identify the customers. What are the kind of concrete ways to identify the customer when you are physically encountering the customer? So whether it's your store or your service point or whatever, but when you physically meet the customer, there are many different ways to identify the customer, and you have to pick not only one of these, but actually a combination of these, whether you use, we have this mobile loyalty cards service provided by Custobar, but you can nowadays it's technically also possible to utilize payment card as a loyalty identification. Or if you have your own mobile app, there can be like barcode which helps you to identify the customers, or QR code, and driving licenses, etc. So there are many different ways, but you have to think which combination of these is the best fit for your business. And yeah, maybe I'll hand over to Colin at this point, and we will jump. So now we've covered the kind of the prerequisites of to utilize data for AI, and now we are jumping to the AI part. So once you have the data there, what you can do then? I think, Colin, you don't have mic on yet. If you unmute yourself.
I do beg your pardon, all of you. Thank you, Tatu. That was a fascinating introduction and background of, as you say, the enablers of AI in marketing. So AI in marketing, as I said, is something I've been involved in for more years than I care to count, but today it's more relevant than ever. Not just because the size of the prize is, but because the risks and the costs of not doing marketing optimally are far higher than they've ever been before, because we've seen the consumers change. In the past, if you sent something irrelevant to a consumer, they ignored it. Today's consumers are much more sensitive. When they see things that are poorly designed and irrelevant for them, they take action. They unfollow your brands, they close their accounts with you, they delete their apps, and of course in today's connected age, they tell their friends they're doing that. They badmouth you. So it makes it very, very important to deliver relevant communications to customers all the time. How do you do that? Well, marketers just need to do what look like simple things to be relevant. They've got to create the compelling content, know the customers are going to be receiving it. If you can do these things together, you achieve relevance. The left-hand side of that, what marketers are great at. They are good at imagining and innovating and being creative. And today's digital world gives them vast ranges of opportunity to apply that creativity and do really cool stuff with it. On the other side, in the digital age, consumers are producing huge amounts of data. That's a wonderful opportunity. It means there is so much of it and it is so complicated. Humans haven't a chance of understanding everything in it. And even if by some miracle they could, it'll have changed on by the time they look at it again. Because if you think about how dynamic today's world is with different trends and fashions and vogues and so on, you know, human knowledge gets out of date. So that's really quite a serious impediment. And what that means is that when marketers try to achieve this goal of relevance, they struggle. They spend a disproportionate amount of their time and effort on the right-hand side, where they're really on what we might call a hiding to nothing. They can't do it because of the bulk, the complexity, the volatility of the data. It's a real problem. It's a massive impediment to successfully achieving relevance in marketing. AI, on the other hand, loves data. The fuel of AI is data. Data algorithms, machine learning algorithms can get into that and learn things. They can find patterns, they can find relationships that are too subtle or too complex for humans to notice, and they can move from these to predict what is going to happen, which customers will be responsive to particular types of approach or communication, for example. And as regards the dynamic and volatile nature of data, they learn. As things change, that shows up in the data, and the algorithms continue to learn and continue to stay current in their knowledge. Now, it's recognized that this constitutes a huge opportunity. There was a groundbreaking report from McKinsey called The Age of Analytics, was produced about the different uses and potentials of AI, and the list of potential applications in consumer products is actually much longer than I've shown on my screen, but very near the top of it was this one, radical personalization, which is making communication and recommendations directly relevant to customers at the individual level. So this is where AI holds huge potential for marketing. It takes this imbalance where marketers can't do their job properly and achieve relevance because of the complexities and impossibility for them to manually deal with the data, and it turns it around, where AI takes on and automates the extraction of customer information from the data. They do the part that's about getting to know the customers and understand them, and it allows the marketers to focus very clearly on what they're best at, how you design and create your messaging and the materials and the messages and the communications that go along with that. This is a great example of something that Doherty and Wilson talk about in a book that came out a year or two ago called Human and Machine. And this is a very interesting read because you hear a lot of things in the news about how AI will take over jobs, it will make people jobless. But actually what Doherty and Wilson say is it will actually, for most jobs, it will make them better. It will give the people who do the jobs superpowers. It will enable them to do their jobs with machine assistance, with an efficiency, with an accuracy, and with a scale that they simply couldn't achieve otherwise. And that is especially true in marketing. And this is how the collaboration between marketer and machine works in marketing. The marketers concentrate on what they're good at. They understand their intended audiences. They apply their creativity to craft the messaging, and they design the content around that that is going to be applicable to these audiences. The machine, on the other hand, understands the target audience at a one-to-one level. It knows how to take these recommendations and match them to individuals at the right time based on all the things it's learned and their propensities, the predictions about how they will behave, how they will respond in certain situations with certain messaging. The two of those come together in the execution of marketing. The messages, the communications, the recommendations, and so on are delivered to the consumers, and the results are obtained. And it's not just providing a one-off process here that gets good offers to the right people in the right way at the right time. It learns because the marketers can see what is happening. They can continue to fine-tune their content and their orientation towards audiences. And AI is all the time reading the data that comes back on the results, seeing the changes in responses and so on, and being able to stay current as things change in terms of audience preferences, for example. So that's the potential. That's what it can do for you. As if I can quote as they said in the book of Human and Machine, if you want to give your marketer superpowers, AI can do it. It can enable them to act at a scale and with a precision that was never possible before. But how do you get there? What do you need to consider if you think this is a good idea and you want to try it? Well, things to think about. Why are you doing it? There is a huge amount of hype around AI, and a lot of that talks about ways that vendors think you should be looking at it. So, for example, we're providing tools and data lakes will tell you it's all about the big data. It's your opportunity. Pull all the data you can together into a data lake, dive into that with tools, and you will find lots of interesting stuff that will let you do your business better. Well, it won't. If you dive into a data lake, the only thing that's going to happen is you will drown in the data. There are any number of patterns in there. Only a tiny number of those patterns and relationships are actually going to be relevant to your business. So always, from a business perspective, what is it you're trying to do in your business? And in marketing, what we're trying to do is to improve things in the life cycle of our customers. We're looking at the stage of customer acquisition, where it costs us money to go out and acquire customers. We market to the many and acquire the few. So when the first customer signs up, we're in a position of deficit. Once we've got them on board, we can cross-sell and upsell. We can grow their value. And in most cases, at some point, the customer relationship will come to an end. Perhaps their interactions with us, their spend with us atrophies and dries up. Or maybe at the peak of their profit to us, one of our competitors steals them away and we lose them right away. And what AI gives us the potential to do is to go across these three cycles. We often label them as attract, grow, and retain, these three phases of the cycles. And we say, how can we apply what AI learns from the data in each of those? In terms of attracting, first, it allows us to attract more and better customers for less spend. So you do a better job of your acquisition marketing at a lower deficit. When customers come on board, AI ensures we don't miss opportunities to gain more value from the relationship with them. And that boosts their responses to our marketing and the revenues we obtain from that. And then when we move to retain, it can tell us who is at risk of going, who is worth keeping, and how to keep them. And if we can do that, it doesn't just mean that we sustain that relationship longer. It means that we have more and more opportunities to grow it. So all the time they're still with us, we are still able to grow their value to us and what they themselves get out of the relationship, how tightly they are bound to us. And in all these cases, as I said, AI can point you at the things that you should do, but also, crucially, in Armstrong One, we focus on how you then deliver those into the processes that run your customer relationships. So it's not just some sort of science exercise to find the relevant things about your customers. It is producing directly actionable recommendations that are injected straight in to your marketing and customer relationship processes. So another thing to think about as you consider your steps into AI, what's your approach going to be? How will you look at this? Because again, you will hear in the market, this is something so big and so radical, you should be doing it everywhere. You should transform your company. All of your processes, wall to wall, should be reinvented and re-engineered around artificial intelligence. Well, that's a great and very compelling idea, but there is more than one kind of big bang, and not all of them are good. And what happens is often if you take a very ambitious approach to try to do things holistically, you're taking on also disproportionate amount of risk of being able to succeed in that. So again, what we would counsel is a stepwise approach. Get there incrementally. Look for the low-hanging fruit. Look at the places where AI can help you and build from there. So always have the vision of how your marketing could be totally transformed by AI, but be realistic about how you get there. Do it in steps, gaining value from each step and building up your capability as you go. Now, whenever you read or hear about AI, you're going to hear more and more about the technology, especially centered around machine learning technology and so-called data science that is talked about today. And you can look at this in two ways. So you can look at the science, the technology that's involved, and you look at the scientists. What does it take to do it? Who and what shape of people do you need to drive this exotic technology to success for you? Well, in terms of the technology, you can either go for tools, and there's a whole spectrum of tools that take you from very high productivity tools like visual workbenches designed to get quick solutions, or right down to the programmer level, where many people go with free open source, but it's a slow, cumbersome job to build significant solutions. Or you can look and see what someone has already done and taken a particular task or business area and packaged AI into solutions and sets of capabilities that do the job you want. Look at the data science approach. And if you think about the way most data science is done today, it really is done the way that things were manufactured before the Industrial Revolution. In the old days, pre-1700, if you wanted something, somebody would basically pick up a lump of hot metal and a hammer and beat it until they produced your product, give it to you and move on. It didn't scale. There's no way that that could basically produce things at the level of that we see today, where we've introduced the principles of mass production, automation, the power sources that drive the manufacture of things. And today, you've got robotic factories that are turning out millions and millions of cars, for example. And nothing has changed. There are still experts who know how to do the job, the actual manufacturing process, but they no longer create every single product themselves. They create the process, and the factory automates that process to produce it at a scale they couldn't. Remember the human and machine combination. And that is the approach that we take with AI, that we've taken with this Armstrong One offering that Tatu talked about, which is to take the data science processes, apply them, build a sophisticated, powerful solution, but packaging it makes it repeatable and scalable and accessible. And it means it can be run without needing to hire and retain expensive data scientists and build up your capabilities completely from scratch. Then the question, where do you start? As I said, we wouldn't recommend a holistic approach. Try to reshape your entire marketing operation around AI at every single decision point. Instead, you're going to say, what is the right place for me to apply artificial intelligence? And what you would look at here, for example, is in Armstrong One, we target the three phases that we talked about of the customer relationship. You can see there, attract, grow, and retain. And the different cycles of the different parts of that are different modules in Armstrong One that go through the acquisition stage of marketing, they go through the growth and nurturing stage, and they go through to retention. And there are over 20 of these, but you don't have to do all of these. So any one organization will typically start off with a certain number of these that are appropriate. So you will look at, for example, you can see on here, you can look at customers, you can be looking at abandoned baskets. For existing, and how best to complete their purchase and not have them drift away. For existing customers who bought with you, you can look at smart interactions between related products, things they bought and things they should buy. You might take your local newsletters and tailor them and personalize them. And for those who are leaving you or at risk of leaving you, you could look at a win-back offer to get them before they're fully out the door. So it's a case of picking selectively what fits for your business, your marketing approach, and your customer base. But out of these, pick any of these, and you can begin to get the value very quickly from those as you go. And all of these within Armstrong One are designed to deliver, as I'll tell you in a moment, directly into your marketing execution systems. But as Tatu showed you earlier, this is a tool loop model in marketing. We've got the customers we know and the customers we don't. So you might be saying, here am I focusing on the right-hand loop? Is that all Armstrong One does? Well, yes, it works with your known customers. It learns things about them. But one great advantage of it is the things that it learns help you in your marketing to the unknown, to the customers out there, your potential prospects. And this is, again, goes along with what Tatu was saying, how CDP can help you link the two together. So can AI. AI can learn things about the different segments and the profiles of customers, for example, who are likely to purchase lots, are likely to stay loyal, and those can help you target your marketing to bring more people into the acquisition phase on here. So it helps to support, as I said, both aspects of that loop. And whatever you're doing in Armstrong, whichever modules you choose, wherever you apply them in your marketing, you can then directly into your marketing execution. And what they are doing is optimizing the decisions that are made at those points, making better recommendations, and then pushing up the ROI that comes back from these marketing interactions that are being executed. It may sound like a silly question. You know, this sounds like a good thing to do. You can improve marketing. AI is smarter. We all know that. But how will I know if I've succeeded? What does success look like? And what I would urge you to do is basically be absolutely relentless about how you measure. It's all about metrics, and not just measurements in terms of response rates, but what does that mean in value? How do you translate this into improved revenues, into higher profits, into lowered costs of acquisition marketing, and so on? And so every time that you're deploying AI at a particular point, a particular touch point in your business, what does that mean? What is it doing for you on an ongoing basis? And Armstrong One is very much oriented around helping to measure, helping to ensure not just that you achieve success, but you're seen to achieve success with the dashboards to allow you to monitor what is happening and the impact that these AI injections of intelligence are having on your results and your bottom line. And just to finish off here, showing you what it can do, this is an example of a Scandinavian beauty and health chain. And at the time they started using this approach, they were sending out newsletters which were not tailored. It was one size fits all. But that gives you a starting point. They've got a certain response rate. And if we take that as a basis, if we take that as a baseline of 100, what happened when they went on to apply AI? This is what they got. And you can see that from the second column there, the email marketing based on transactional recommendations, in other words, triggered by smart associations with what they bought, that provided a 6 times increase in response rates. To the right of the center there, AI-driven emails based on share of wallet, trying to understand what else we could be selling them, where perhaps is their spend going to our competitors. That was about a 4.5 times increase. But right in the middle, you can see that for this particular user, what gave them the highest results was actually an AI module to drive recommendations based on product replenishment. And this is saying, for people who are repeat customers, can you hit them at exactly the right time when they would be susceptible to repeat purchases? And that particular one gave an improvement of over 9 times in the response rate. On the right-hand side, the win-back offers, you can see that looks lower than 100, and you might think, well, that looks a bit low, but actually this was the very first time this organization had done anything to try to do retention and win-back. So again, beginning to get the responses out there when none was achieved before is actually quite a significant measure of success. So that has, I hope, given you a good introduction and overview as to how AI can be applied to marketing, and indeed why it's so important to apply AI to marketing today, to achieve this magical goal of relevance and therefore satisfy your customers and build the type of relationship that's valuable to them and to you. And we're taking you through Armstrong One, the ability for it to cross all the stages of the customer life cycle, for you to select specific points of intelligence and to spread the value from that. And we would be very happy to show you that and to take you through it in detail, show you what it can do, how it's achieved, what the steps to getting there. But for now, before we stop, we'd love to hear if you've any questions or comments. Or Tatu, is there anything you'd like to say while we're waiting for some questions to roll in?
Actually, we did get some questions already, so we could start facing them right away. First of all, somebody quite in the beginning asked if this material will be available, and yes, we will we will send you a link to the recorded webinar afterwards, so you can kind of play back it and see the slides then in the webinar afterwards as well. Then there was one kind of good question to get started with it is that how can you give us a really concrete example of utilization of AI in marketing? And I was thinking one of the things you have actually here in this Armstrong one in these modules is win-back module, and that's that means concretely to put it really concrete terms is that when customer when there are customers who used to make purchases from you, and then at some point they become passive. So what you can do without AI in Custobar, you can set the time limits. Let's say after 6 months passivation, send automated email or send automated like win-back SMS message or some other messages to other channels. That you can do with Custobar. Or you can set even like create set of messages like after 6 months, then another type of message after 9 months, and a third one after 12 months. But that's triggering then kind of for every customer the same timing. So it's the same 6 months of passivation for every customer. But if you consider your customer base, there must be some customers who are really active, who are kind of have tended, or they purchase from you, let's say weekly basis, and then there are some customers who purchase from you every second month. So they are both active in their own way. So the other one is purchasing weekly basis, the other one every second month. So then it makes a lot of sense to utilize AI to personalize the triggering of the activation message, so that this person who is purchasing from you every week will get the kind of win-back message already, let's say after 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
That's right. Knowing when the time is right, as you say. And because we're dealing with AI, you don't have to, and that's, as you say, recognizing smartly when someone has gone dormant. But with AI, this is predictive analytics we're talking about here. We can predict the risk of those. So we can see changes in people's behavior that imply they're on the way to exiting, they're on the way to churning, as it were, out of our business before that happens. Yeah. Now, that's a very valuable early warning, but depending on your type of business, you might decide to act on it in different ways. Because you have to, when you're considering retention, in a lot of industries like telco, for example, people churn all the time. And what you've got to think about is, as we've just said, the risk that they're going to go, but it may be a mistake to scramble and try to stop everybody, because some people are not worth keeping and some people will be impossible to keep. So it's, can I save them? And is their continued business for us in the future going to be worth it? And those are the ones where you put the investment, and those are what organizations tend to see the biggest success.
Yeah.
Another question I've seen in our list that's come in here is somebody saying, I describe our customer data as limited. We're at quite an early stage. How rich does your data need to be before AI will be able to help us? And that's a very good question, because the more you know, the more potential there is in the data about the customer, the better. Having said that, everything in Armstrong 1 is designed pragmatically to work with the lowest common denominator. So to start off with, as long as you have a backbone of data about customer transactions, that is enough for these modules to work. If you have more data, you can go further and further in terms of knowing the customer more intimately and being more accurate in how you would target recommendations and communications to them.
Yeah, exactly. Then there's a question, is there some sort of integration between Armstrong 1 and Custobar? So yes, there is. So how this whole kind of cooperation works technically is that Custobar is the CDP tool. So Custobar collects all the touchpoint data, purchase history, and kind of creates this unified customer profile. And then Armstrong 1, Houston Analytics has built kind of seamless integration with Custobar. So Armstrong 1 is kind of reading the data from Custobar API, and kind of, but not the kind of customer identity, how to say, personal data like address information or names or email addresses, because the Armstrong 1 does not need those. It just reads the customer ID and then the transactions. And then based on that, it triggers back to Custobar then those messages like when to trigger campaign message to let's say again as a use this win back as an example, when to trigger the win back message and to whom and what time. So then that triggering comes from Armstrong One back to Custobar. So it's a kind of two-way integration between the Armstrong One and Custobar. And
we see that as a very strong natural fit, because it's all very well having something that is making smart recommendations, but you only get to the smart recommendations by getting the data properly curated and available to the system. And then, of course, once you've got the potential recommendations, how do you execute on them? You don't make anything until you actually can execute this and deliver the messaging to the customer, and so on. So the ability of Custobar to cover those two ends of that, with Armstrong One helping to inject intelligence into the decisions and the actions that are taken from that, is, we feel, a very, very powerful one.
Yeah.
And going along with that, I see somebody saying we currently focus our marketing efforts on a single channel, which is email. Is the Custobar and Armstrong One overkill for that? Well, from the Armstrong One perspective, of course, Armstrong One can go far beyond that. I mean, many of our customers are multi-channel or omni-channel, but the important thing is to have a single unified understanding of the customer, regardless of whether you're dealing with one channel or many. We have customers who use it directly on a single channel, but the extension from that to others doesn't mean a complete re-implementation on a new channel. It simply means the understanding of the customer can get richer because you're using data from the new channel, but exactly the same set of decisions or recommendations are available to be executed through different channels. Do you want to add anything on the Custobar side, Tatu?
Maybe I could just say that it's perfectly fine to start with email, but whether you use, I mean, anyway, I think it's good for your strategy to marketing strategy to kind of add more channels there. So to start utilizing your data for targeting display ads, advertisement, but also then SMS is really well working channel. Maybe consider if there would be room for mobile app or some other means to kind of target customers through the notifications. So yeah, it's perfectly fine to stick with email and then think about carefully which channels to add then later.
And I guess sort of going along with that, what infrastructure do we need to have in place, or do we need to develop to adopt Custobar and Armstrong One? I'll take one part of that. On the human side of Armstrong One, as I mentioned in my slides, you know, there's this rather daunting prospect that people are often given the impression, you want to do AI, you need to hire data scientists. And that's, you know, that they're hard to get hold of, they're expensive, and, you know, how will it all turn out when they've learned your business and so on. From that perspective, no need. We've done the data science. That is embodied in automated analyses and processes built into Armstrong One. So from the personnel perspective, it should simply be, you know, you don't need to basically deploy new bodies to do this. And do you want to talk a little bit about the physical infrastructure, what servers they would need or anything like that? Or, or not, rather?
No servers needed. So both of these services are provided software as a service basis. So it's just the license that you purchase. You can actually even activate Custobar into use through our website directly with just like self-service. But then you can of course contact us as well, and we can set up the environment for you, and we have a long list of ready-made integrations to different systems. For example, most common e-commerce platforms like Shopify, Magento, WooCommerce, we have ready-made integrations. We can retrieve the data from those automatically, and also we have really well documented API, so you can push the data, or we can pull the data from your ERP systems or other systems. We have also ready-made integrations to Zendesk and Freshdesk, and like I mentioned, Facebook ads and Google ads. So we have a long list of ready-made integrations which make it easy to get started and easy to get the data flowing from different systems into the CDP, Custobar CDP tool. And then when you get it to Custobar, it automatically also flows to Armstrong One. So you do need some onboarding, you do need some integration work in the beginning, but in best case, depending on what kind of technical setup your existing setup is, it can be quite smooth, and it's definitely not the kind of traditional integration project where you kind of spend months tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of euros for that.
Question I see has come in about a specific situation. Says, is there a method approach available to attempt to recommend products that are new in your catalog to existing clients? That's an interesting one. If you think about, I guess the sort of poster child for recommendations, if you go back many years, is Amazon. And they were using very simple systems that were known as collaborative filtering, but they were looking for exact matches. So if somebody had never bought a book before, it would never get recommended until people started buying it. In Armstrong One, it's a little bit different for that. We will look for specific products. That's the finest level of detail, when you've got the data on that. But when you have new products, we can also do things within a category. So based on what somebody has done with similar products or ones in the same category, we can begin to make assumptions and inferences on that. It is possible as well with AI to take that further. If you go into describing, the more richly you can describe the products, the more precisely you can begin to predict in advance how people will react to them.
Yeah.
And I think we can manage one more question. So
yes.
Sounds very good. Thank you very much for that. How much will the new tool cost? And are the new AI informations visible in Custobar, or is there an account in Armstrong necessary? Tatu, take that first up.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that this person who is asking knows already, or is maybe using already Custobar. But if you are not, the Custobar pricing, it's divided into two. So that's the kind of standard version of Custobar, which you can take into use through our website, and there's actually custobar.com/pricing, and you can check it's based, the Custobar pricing is always based on the volume of your customer database. What is the size of your customer database? And that's the main criteria for the license price. So you can check the pricing yourself from our website for the standard version. For the, we call it Custobar Plus version, which has a little bit more features and kind of more, the support services are more comprehensive. So that's starting from 750 euros monthly license fee, and up to 50,000 customer contacts, and then it goes, of course, depending on how many customer contacts you have in your database, and then adding then the Armstrong One service on top of that is also kind of based on the similar kind of license fee. So it's based on the size of your customer database, and then also the other angle is that how many modules. So Colin showed you this image, which is still visible here. So there are more than 20 different types of AI modules provided by Armstrong One. So you can pick just one of them, you can pick 3 of them, or how many you like, or you can add them later. So you can maybe start with 1 or 2 and then add more later. So you are paying per module based on, and depending on how many customer contacts you have in your database. So I think the lowest price per module is a few hundred euros. So you can get started quite kind of depending on the size of your database, and then extend it later.
Yeah, and so both are really designed to scale. It's, for any size of organization, it depends on how broadly you want to use it, what size of customer base you're addressing, but also with Armstrong, the modules. And like I said, remember, rather than big bang, we view this as incremental. Pick the ones that are most likely to be beneficial for you, start off with those, get value, and extend from there.
Yeah.
And we've had another question come in.
One more.
Yep. But does Armstrong One use some sort of feedback loop, a positive, negative one, to improve the accuracy of the AI recommendation engine based on previous recommendations? Yep, I mentioned earlier the benefit of AI being able to, as things change, pick up what is happening. And what we do with Armstrong One, we don't have algorithms where the individual models are self-learning, ones that react on a case-by-case basis. Our feeling is those things tend to be a bit overreactive. Instead, the analytical processes, the AI processes that we automate include ones that do model refresh. So basically, as we get the performance data back after specific periods, or when it reaches a certain level, or the accuracy drops or whatever, there's automatic retraining of the models of that. So we keep them up to date that way. But happy to get into discussion about that and talk in more detail with anyone who wants to roll up their sleeves and get into that technology.
Yeah. I think it's time to wrap up, and thank you everyone for your attendance and for your active questions, active participation, and thank you, Colin, for being with me here. For
it's been a pleasure, Tatu. Thank you very much for involving me.
Thank you. And
as we said, if any of you would like to see this in more detail, find out more about it, we can easily give you a 50-minute demo. Just you've got the contact there. Just drop a mail to sales@Custobar. But thank you so much for your time and attention today. We trust that's been useful for you, and we look forward to talking to you all some more in future.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.